Derrick Henry ripped into Lamar Jackson's critics. We talk about that. Kyle Van Noy possibly hinting at some great Zay Flowers news and so much more coming up next on Locked On Ravens.
You are Locked On Ravens, your daily Baltimore Ravens podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome into another edition of Locked On Ravens, your daily Baltimore Ravens podcast. I'm your host, Kevin Ostreicher of Ravens Wire, here with you on the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Thank you so much for being here today on Locked On Ravens, making us your first listen of the day and just a part of your day in general. We're free and available for you on all podcasting platforms, including in video form, where you can like and subscribe to the channel, building a great community over there. Also in audio form, where you can follow along and subscribe to the community over there. In audio form has been growing ever since day one. Started up in video form a couple years after audio. We've been growing each and every single day. We're a 5-day-a-week Ravens podcast, so Monday through Friday we have our weekly episodes, and we do bonus content like going live after every Ravens game, which we will be live after the Ravens and Steelers game, post-game, about 15 minutes after the final whistle, so be sure to stay tuned for all of that. Today's episode of Locked On Ravens is brought to you by FanDuel. You can start the season with a big return on FanDuel. New customers can place a $5 bet. You are started with $200 in bonus bets if you win your first $5 bet. Visit FanDuel.com to get started. Feels like the days are going by really quickly and also just dragging by as we wait for the Ravens and Steelers to match up again. Saturday Night Football, divisional AFC North battle to move on to the divisional round. And of course, we're going to have a lot of coverage of that here today on the show as we are a Ravens podcast. But Derrick Henry ripped into Lamar Jackson's critics, just absolutely blasted them. We're going to talk about that in the first part of the show, talk about the dynamic that those two have and how great it's been and how that should translate over to the playoffs. Then in the second part of the show, Kyle Van Noy hinted at some potentially great Zay Flowers news. We'll talk about what he said and how realistic it actually is that Flowers plays in the second part. And then finally, Marcus Williams helping out the Ravens in really a situation that everybody understands is going to end with him not being on the team next season. But little cap restructure, then we'll get into the game a little bit as well, is again, we're just counting down, honestly, the hours. I keep looking at the clock and I'm like, come on, can we hurry this thing up? So let's dive into it here. First of all, Derrick Henry goes to bat for Lamar Jackson. Henry spoke to the media on Tuesday, and again, with the game on Saturday, everything is sped up a day. So media availability starts on Tuesday instead of Wednesday. And Henry, first of all, he was asked about what playing alongside Lamar has done for him this season. He said, quote, "I've answered this a lot during the season, but Lamar is Lamar, the best player in the league, and I feel like if anyone plays with him, he's a benefit to any player. I'm happy and glad to be able to play beside him. He's a future Pro Football Hall of Famer, and he makes everything different for everybody. He's a dynamic player. You have to respect his arm and his legs. With 8, you always have a chance." And so a little bit later, Henry was asked about kind of the same situation, just taking it a little further. And he was asked about his impact on the offense actually hurting Lamar Jackson's chances at winning the MVP award, because people are saying, oh, Lamar has so much help. He has so much help. And Henry said, you can put anybody by Lamar and they're going to have a hell of a year. That's just the type of player he is. My success shouldn't knock his or vice versa. Lamar is the main reason why I came here, to play with a Hall of Fame caliber quarterback, MVP caliber quarterback. I've been seeing all the chatter. I forgot who said it, but celebrate the two, him and Josh Allen. They both had a hell of a year this year. I feel like Lamar, in his case, I feel like his stats can be even better. I feel like he's the best player in the league, and it's only going to get better from here. I don't feel like what I've done should hurt him. I feel like he's helped me even more. And this is what we've been talking about here on Locked On Ravens forever. Really, since Derrick Henry came in here, and you can honestly go back a while. Like, you look at a guy like Gus Edwards, and Gus had a heck of a career in Baltimore. I mean, Gus was an awesome member of the Ravens, but obviously, as he's gotten older, he slowed down a little bit. And even just last season, Gus had an amazing year. He had double-digit touchdowns, and again, a lot of those, a lot of goal line scores for him. But still, Gus was a guy that he was Mr. Dependable, averaging over 5 yards a carry. Last year was his first year without averaging 5 yards a carry or more. And then this year in Los Angeles, it's just been a struggle. He's been injured. He hasn't been really doing anything that great. JK's had a decently solid year in Los Angeles, but I think JK's a heck of a player. Derrick Henry was having great years in Tennessee. That's because Derrick Henry's a heck of a player. But then you see Lamar lead backfields of like Latavius Murray, Le'Veon Bell, and Devonta Freeman. That backfield would have been the best backfield in NFL history 10 years ago, 8 years ago. But those were guys that were past their prime at that point. And even they were having great years, or at least to the level that you would expect a 30-plus-year-old running back or late 20-year-old running back to have in that system. Mark Ingram had 15 total touchdowns next to Lamar his first season in Baltimore. And then obviously the second year didn't go as well, but I don't think Mark Ingram was getting that production anywhere. And Lamar just adds that element. That honestly should be a help to Lamar's MVP case, because Derrick Henry in Tennessee, yeah, he was balling out. Derrick Henry's Derrick Henry, but there's only so much that he can do being the entire offense in Tennessee, or that he could do being the entire offense in Tennessee. He comes to Baltimore, and Lamar just opens everything up for him. Now, again, this isn't me saying Derrick Henry would have had a terrible year if he went anywhere else but Baltimore. I don't believe that for a second. He's still a heck of a player. I think wherever he would have gone, he would have had a good year. But I just think that Lamar elevates his talent. And that's been the argument for Josh Allen, is he elevates his talent more than Lamar does. I think both guys elevate their talent a ton. I think Lamar, personally, over the course of his career, has needed to elevate more talent. Obviously, the Bills got Josh Allen, Stephon Diggs, and Josh has elevated the talent around him this season. Like Derrick Henry said, we can respect them both. I never once have said here on this show that, Josh Allen, he's a terrible quarterback. No, I've never said that. Josh is a great player. Lamar is also a great player. But I just feel like when we're talking about using Derrick Henry as a punishment to Lamar, I mean, why is that a thing? Like, yes, we can sit here and we can admit that Lamar has a better supporting cast than Josh Allen this season, but it's not like Josh Allen has scrubs next to him. I mean, the way that the national media, even some Bills fans, have talked about James Cook and like, Josh has no help. James Cook has had a great season. He isn't a 1,000-yard rusher. He has had an incredible year, 15-plus touchdowns. I mean, this is a guy that we should be celebrating alongside Josh Allen, much like we should be celebrating Derrick Henry alongside Lamar Jackson. But both of those running backs are being used essentially as pawns by media to either prop up or tear down a candidate, and that's not right. We can admit that Derrick Henry has helped Lamar Jackson. I'm not going to sit here and say that he hasn't. Absolutely has. But it goes both ways. And, I mean, Derrick puts it really well here, saying that, it's the type of player that Lamar is, but at the end of the day, he's a guy that he's going to make anybody in that backfield better. You can put anybody in that backfield, they're going to have a great season. And I know the conversation around MVP has been interesting, to say the least, but Henry's been a player that is fit like a glove in Baltimore next to Lamar Jackson. And to use him as a punishment to Lamar, I don't get that. But again, it's not the be-all, end-all if Lamar doesn't win the MVP. The big goal is the Super Bowl, and that's hopefully what the Ravens are going to be able to do this season with Derrick Henry in the backfield, a guy that they did not have last season because Ran Carthon did not trade him to Baltimore because of the ownership reportedly by Tennessee saying, you're not going to do this. So it could have been destiny last season where maybe with Derrick Henry they win the Super Bowl. But then people are talking about how, without Derrick Henry, Lamar wouldn't be doing this without Derrick Henry. Yeah, Lamar won 2 MVPs without Derrick Henry. I mean, are we just going to take away what he's done previously without him? It's been great. Both guys have benefited. I think we should just leave it at that, where Derrick has been a great help to Lamar. Lamar has been a great help to Derrick. And both guys have benefited from each other being in that backfield. So, I mean, Derrick Henry sees all the chatter. It's just, you could tell during his answer to that, he was just kind of like, this is ridiculous. Why are these conversations even being had? Because he said it. He said it. He sees the chatter. And a lot of these guys do. So it's kind of crazy we're even to this point. But Derrick Henry made his thoughts be known. And I 100% agree with him on his opinion. But coming up in the second part of the show, Kyle Van Noy hinted at some potentially great Zay Flowers news. We talk about what he said, what it means, and so much more coming up here on Locked On Ravens. First of the show is brought to you by FanDuel. From big upsets to game-winning drives, the NFL playoffs are better with FanDuel because right now new customers can bet $5 and get $200 in bonus bets guaranteed. That's $200 in bonus bets. Win or lose, the FanDuel app gives you everything you need for live bets, same-game parlays, and so much more. And so for this Ravens and Steelers wild card matchup, you have the Ravens coming in on FanDuel is 9.5-point home favorite. So if you like the Ravens as home favorites, or if you like the Steelers as road underdogs, be sure to pick your side over at FanDuel. Just visit FanDuel.com to join today and get started with $200 in bonus bets. That's FanDuel.com. Make this playoff season unforgettable with FanDuel, an official sportsbook partner of the NFL. We're back here, our second segment, Locked On Ravens. Kevin Ostreicher is still here with you on this midweek edition of the show, talking Ravens football, Ravens and Steelers coming at you on Saturday night prime time. I mean, again, this is the storybook start that you would want for a potentially, hopefully long playoff run for the Baltimore Ravens. And this is the first step in that. And they obviously have to take care of business on Saturday, but they might have to do so without one of their best offensive playmakers in Zay Flowers, who obviously got banged up in that Week 18 game against the Browns. And John Harbaugh classified it as a day-to-day injury. He said that it's not season-ending, but the reports that have come out about it seemingly indicate that it's going to be really tough for him to play this week against Pittsburgh. But if the Ravens advance, might be back for the divisional round. So we'll take a look at some different angles of this injury over the course of the next couple of minutes in this segment. But Kyle Van Noy hinted at some maybe great Zay Flowers news. And we're going to talk about what he said, break it down a little bit. So if you didn't know, Kyle Van Noy hosts a podcast with Gerald McCoy, former NFL player, actually almost signed with the Ravens a couple of times. I remember he was, I think, really close. Then obviously I think he's a part of that almost Ravens team. I know he was rumored. But Van Noy, talking about Zay Flowers, said, knowing Zay, he's played when he hasn't practiced. He's a tough little sucker, bro. He's going to do everything he can to play. I'm going in expecting to see him. I'm going in knowing I got him in the game. So for me, I know there are a lot of people who are reading a ton into this, and there are other people who are reading nothing into it. I'm in the middle, and the reason I'm in the middle is because, one, the Ravens, I'm sure, do not want to risk this turning into a bigger thing than it is. Again, I think classified as a knee sprain, and if Zay can't cut the way he wants to, if he can't move and change directions the way he wants to, let's say he comes in and helps the Ravens win the game, makes a couple of big plays, but then late he re-injures himself. You don't want to turn a minor injury into a major injury, especially when Zay could be back in the next week or two. So that to me is me saying, oh, well, I really don't expect him to play in this game. If he does play, I still think it's a very small shot. Kyle Van Noy, obviously, saying that he's expecting to see him. You know, he's a tough guy, and Zay has had moments where he hasn't practiced and he's still suited up. But if he's active, it would remind me a little bit, and I've talked about this. If you're an everydayer, you've heard me. I've even talked about it in the last couple of days. It will remind me of the Mark Andrews situations, both in 2019 and in 2023, last season, where Mark was injured. And even Mark Ingram in 2019 too. Those guys were injured, and they came back for the Titans division game. And both Marks clearly were not themselves. Early in the game, a ball bounced off of Mark Andrews' hands, and that was an interception, and that honestly turned the tides of that game early. Now, there are obviously other reasons they lost it, but my point is Mark clearly was not himself, right? Clearly was not himself. Same thing with Mark Ingram, right? You could see him with, I think it was a massage gun. He was trying to get himself loosened up and going in the game. He had the calf thing, I believe, and I can't remember what Mark had, but it was a leg injury, and both guys just weren't explosive, and they weren't themselves. So if Zay is active, is it really worth putting him out there when he's not going to be himself potentially? You know, maybe he's able to make a miraculous recovery, be out there. I remember a couple weeks ago, Rashad Bateman was in the boot and everybody was freaking out, and then he was able to play like nothing happened. It was precautionary because he got injured in practice and everything. Maybe that's what Zay makes a miraculous recovery, but I'm not holding my breath on that. I mean, clearly it's a decently serious thing to the point where like he didn't practice on Tuesday. I don't expect him to practice today or tomorrow. I wouldn't expect him to practice this entire week. Could he suit up and play? Maybe. If he plays, I would probably expect him to be a decoy, if we're being honest. And I just don't know if that's worth it, because I think there are other guys in the receiver room that can make an impact with those snaps and actually be a threat to get the ball, not as a decoy. to where Tylan Wallace and Nelson Aguilar, Isaiah Likely, even a Tez Walker. That's a little crazy with Tez Walker. I get that Van Noy sees Zay as a tough guy. I see him as a tough guy. Zay is a tough guy. But because he's tough doesn't mean that it is the smart thing to do to put him out there when he clearly probably will not be himself. And look, this is the playoffs. Guys are going to want to suit up. Guys are going to want to play because this is it if you don't win. And I'm sure there are going to be a lot of what ifs for Zay if he doesn't play and the Ravens lose. And he's like, well, I could have gone maybe, could have been like half speed. I would expect Zay to be on a major pitch count if he plays in this game. I even expect him to be on a pitch count next week if he plays, in my opinion. Maybe not, but that is my take on that. Zay is an important piece of this offense. No doubt. No doubt. And I think it gives Pittsburgh an advantage if he doesn't play 1,000%. But I have confidence in Rashad Bateman based off of what we have seen. He and Lamar's connection is exactly what we all hoped it would be. I think Zay is someone that opens up a lot of weapons on that Ravens offense just by his presence alone. And so I get if you feel like he can be an effective decoy. I'm not saying Steelers wouldn't have to pay attention to him, but Tylan Wallace has proven in some opportunities. Nelson Aguilar has been a steady veteran, although it's been a worse year for him this year than it was last year, and I'll acknowledge that for sure. But I would still feel decently confident in a Mark Andrews, Isaiah Likely, Rashad Bateman trio without Zay and just getting him right. This is not a good situation, all right? It's tough. It's sad it happened, and it's disappointing. But you have to play it smart here if you're Baltimore. So, look, Kyle's going to go in there expecting to see him and knowing he's got him in the game. I don't know if this is insider information from Kyle very sneakily or if he's just giving his opinion. I would lean towards him just giving his opinion. I wouldn't read too much into it. But I think the notion that, here I'm recording this and we're here Wednesday saying that Zay is automatically out, I'm not buying that quite yet. I do want to give it the week to see, but my prediction is that he doesn't play, which again would be a big blow, especially because, when the Steelers, they line up in man, that gives them an advantage. But I think that I do trust Rashad, Isaiah Likely, and Mark Andrews, plus the other guys that they have. Maybe they get the running backs involved in the screen game a little more, right? I think running screens is going to be very effective. Maybe some tight end screens to Isaiah Likely. Maybe you throw a running back screen out there to Derrick Henry or Justice Hill. Maybe Keaton Mitchell gets some action. They have weapons to overcome Zay Flowers not being there for a week. And so that, to me, is the big thing that the Ravens have to weigh. It's, you get a really explosive playmaker in there, but how explosive will they be with the injury? That's something you have to monitor with everybody. And so in Zay's case, that's something you definitely have to monitor. The other side of that is they have enough weapons to overcome it. And I think they believe in their guys. They're not going to make any rash decisions, in my opinion. So we'll just see how it all goes for the Ravens and Zay Flowers. Coming up, though, we'll be diving into Marcus Williams helping out the Ravens. A little cap situation ahead of the playoffs. Plus, we'll get into a little more about the Ravens and Steelers game. So be sure to stay tuned. A lot to get to on Locked On Ravens. First, the show is brought to you by PrizePicks. It's playoff time, and if you're like me, you want to make the most of these final weeks of football action. That's where PrizePicks comes in. If you love football and want a chance to win real money while watching the games, PrizePicks is the place for you. It's the best way to turn your sports opinions into cash with daily fantasy player projections. With PrizePicks, you simply pick more or less on player stats like total passing yards or rushing touchdowns. So for a shot to win up to 1,000 times your money, you can make your picks in less than 60 seconds. And whether you're looking for a flex play to boost your payout or want to cash out quickly, PrizePicks has got you covered. And with over 10 million members and billions in winnings, it's clear that people are loving at this platform. I've been playing for a while now, and I'm having a blast. This week, I'm eyeing Lamar Jackson for more than 230 passing yards and Derrick Henry for more than one touchdown. It's so easy to use, and I love how fast the payouts are. I've gotten paid out in as little as 15 minutes when my picks hit. Plus, the weekly promos like Taco Tuesday discounts add even more value to my lineups. Here's a special offer for Locked On NFL listeners. Download the app today. Use code Locked On NFL to get $50 instantly after you play your first $5 lineup. Download the app today. Use code Locked On NFL to get $50 instantly after you play your first $5 lineup. PrizePicks, run your game. And the show is brought to you by Rocket Money. Did Rocket Money help you find any subscriptions you forgot about or that you were paying for twice? That's definitely happened to me. I had a few subscriptions I didn't even realize I was still paying for, and Rocket Money made it so easy to track them all down. It's like having a personal assistant for your finances. Rocket Money is a personal finance app that helps you find and cancel your unwanted subscriptions, monitors your spending, helps you lower your bills so you can grow your savings. It brings everything together in one place, whether it's subscriptions, your spending habits, or even goals you want to hit this year. Rocket Money has over 5 million users and has saved a total of $500 million in canceled subscriptions, saving members up to $740 a year when using all the app's premium features. For me, one of the best features is the subscription tracker. I've used it to cancel services I wasn't using anymore, and I've already saved a ton. Plus, with their goals feature, I've been able to automatically set aside money for my future. No more stressing about budgeting every month. Cancel your unwanted subscriptions and reach your financial goals faster with Rocket Money. Go to rocketmoney.com/lockedon today. That's rocketmoney.com/lockedon, rocketmoney.com/lockedon. We're back here, our final segment of Locked On Ravens. Kevin Oestreicher is still here with you, talking Ravens football. If you're new to the show, hit that like and subscribe button in video form and follow along in audio form for 5 days a week of daily Ravens coverage plus more. We have a little bit of cap situation to talk about. I know we're all playoff mode, MVP mode, but the Ravens and Marcus Williams, according to Jason OTC, to stuff it over the cap, and they are really good at breaking everything down from a salary cap perspective. Per source, the Ravens and Marcus Williams agreed on a revised contract that will allow them to use a post-June 1 designation on him next season. This will let the Ravens defer around $6.7 in dead money to 2026. So then Ravens salary cap, Brian McFarland, who does a great job breaking down everything for the Ravens from a salary cap perspective, asked about it a little bit and said that Williams, his $12 million salary was reduced to $2.1 million, which immediately creates $9.9 million in cap space instead of having to wait until 6/2, until post-June 1. Then they'll get the remaining $2.1 in cap savings after 6/1. The dead money of $6.7 in both 2025 and 2026 is unchanged. So Jason's saying, providing some clarification, that under the prior deal, they would have had to carry him at the 18.7 number until June 1st, which is a huge burden. So then with this revised contract, the drop has him now only at $8.8 million until June 1st. So how that works is, in the prior deal, that $18.7 million would essentially be a cap hold, where the Ravens could not use any of that money to sign any free agents until they released him, or just post-June 1 happens. That's what the post-June 1 cut is. But now with the new contract, the Ravens free up now $9.9 million in cap space immediately, so that when March hits and free agency hits, they can now use $9.9 million of that $18.7 million. And the dead money, again, you can defer that over. So 2025 and 2026, that 6.7 is unchanged. So a lot of moving parts there, but long story short, this is going to help the Ravens probably sign a couple of guys, because we know that once June comes around, free agency starts in March, a lot of guys are gone. A lot of guys are signed with teams. So now the Ravens will have about $10 million in cap space to operate with, instead of having to wait to use that money until a couple months into free agency. So big help from Marcus Williams there to help out the Ravens. And again, just been a really disappointing situation for him in Baltimore. I mean, disappointing for the Ravens as well, for the play that he has had. It just has not been a great time, I'd say. I mean, look, first couple of years he played great, but he was always injured. And then this season, obviously, it's been a drastic drop-off, and credit to the Ravens for making that tough decision. Ardarius Washington has come in and done a really good job. And speaking of that secondary, Ardarius Washington, Marlon Humphrey, Kyle Hamilton, Brandon Stevens, Nate Wiggins, all these guys, they're going to be tasked with stopping this Pittsburgh offense. And we can be honest, Pittsburgh doesn't have the most high-powered offense in the NFL, right? It's not like they are this number one pass offense, number one rush offense. That actually is the Ravens statistically, by the way. So this Pittsburgh game to me comes down to a couple of things. We talked about it a lot. It's going to be turnovers, going to be penalties, going to be offensive line play, going to be defense, going to be a lot of different things. And if the Ravens can stay true to themselves, that's the big thing. Because it seems like in their playoff losses recently, you can go back as far as you want to, the Ravens just get psyched out. Like they psych themselves out, and they get punched in the mouth, and they get scared, essentially, or they panic. You have to just breathe, just calm down. I just think it's really as simple as that. Calm down, let it all out, play your game, and you'll be okay. You have Lamar Jackson, you have Derrick Henry, and this goes for the players too. Lamar, the playoffs have been disappointing for the most part, right? He's had a couple of great games for sure. I'm not trying to discount that, but obviously his goal is to win the Super Bowl, and the Ravens have not advanced to the Super Bowl yet. So The Ravens will have an opportunity here. I still feel good about them in this matchup. And again, we're going to dive into a lot more of it. The Steelers have a great run defense, not as good of a pass defense. The Steelers' run game is pretty non-existent, so I expect Baltimore to clean up in that category, which I think will make Pittsburgh's offense more one-dimensional. There are so many different things, but I really do think it comes down to Baltimore playing their style of football and not getting psyched out. Just sticking to it, sticking to the plan. That I think will go a long way for the Ravens in this game. That's all I have for you here today, though, on Locked On Ravens. Thank you so much for tuning into the show again. We're a 5-day-a-week Ravens podcast, so if you enjoy the show, be sure to hit that like and subscribe button in video form and follow along in audio form if you have not done so already. Shout out to the everydayers who tune in every day. If you're new to the show, new to the channel, welcome in. And if you're somewhere in the middle, thank you for your support. Coming up tomorrow, we'll be back here with more Ravens content as always, so be sure to stay tuned. I'll see you right back here tomorrow on Locked On Ravens.